Let's be real, guys. If you've ever wondered what happens when you disappear on a woman, I'm here to tell you something most won't. When you go silent or completely pull away from a woman, no explanation, no texts, no calls, she feels something. You might think she'll just move on and forget about you. But trust me, it's far from that simple. In fact, disappearing on a woman is one of the most powerful things you can do in the dating game. And no, it's not about playing games or being manipulative. It's about creating an impact, one that demands her attention. You've probably heard the saying, absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? But let's take it deeper. When a woman feels ignored, when you pull back and give her space, she starts to feel an emotional void. That void triggers a reaction in her. She begins to wonder what went wrong, why you stopped engaging, and if she did something to push you away. This isn't just about rejection, it's about her ego. And that, my friend, is what you want to capitalize on. It's important to understand that women, like men, crave validation. But when you disappear without explanation, it flips the script. She starts to question her own worth. She begins to chase the validation she's used to receiving from you. And when she realizes you're not around to give it to her, that's when things get interesting. Don't get it twisted. Disappearing doesn't mean ghosting. You're not leaving her in the dark without any trace. You're just being scarce, letting her feel that space, letting her wonder about you. This isn't about ignoring her for the sake of being cold or rude. It's about creating a sense of curiosity and mystery that will pull her back in. You're allowing her to experience the psychological effect of loss, and that's a feeling no one wants to lose. You don't have to constantly prove yourself to a woman or be always available to win her over. The power comes in knowing your value, holding your ground, and knowing that sometimes silence speaks louder than words. So if you've been the one chasing or over-explaining yourself to women, it's time to flip the script. Disappear for a while and see how that works. Trust me, you'll get her attention. Just wait and see. 1. The void of attention. When a woman experiences the sudden silence of a man who once gave her attention, she's left with an unmistakable void. Attention creates connection, validation, and even a sense of security, whether she's fully conscious of it or not. So, when that attention abruptly fades, it's like flipping a switch, triggering an almost visceral reaction. Why? Because attention is powerful. It's one of the core ways humans feel seen, appreciated, and valued. Now, take away that attention without any warning, and suddenly, she's left in a vacuum. It's an empty space where she's left questioning herself, the connection, and maybe even her self-worth. This lack of attention isn't just a gap in communication. It's a psychological shift. It plants seeds of curiosity and a nagging question. What changed? In a world where attention is constantly sought, losing it becomes unsettling. She may start overthinking, wondering if she said or did something wrong. The absence of attention can feel like rejection, and most people naturally crave what they're denied. So, rather than letting go of the situation, she might start trying to figure out why you pulled away, giving you a presence in her mind that's often stronger than when you were actively giving attention. Let's put this into a practical example. Imagine you're chatting with her regularly. Conversations flow, messages come back and forth. There's a predictable rhythm, and she feels confident in your interest. But then, without explanation, you stop. A day goes by, then 2, and she's refreshing her phone, wondering where you went. The void you've created drives her attention back to you. She might even text you first, just to see if everything is okay. In that moment, her curiosity and need for reassurance outweigh her pride. She's not reaching out because you've done anything grand. It's your silence that's loudest. This approach may sound manipulative on the surface, but it's simply a response to the psychological desire for attention that many people share. The takeaway is this: when you leave a void, it allows her to realize the weight of your presence. Silence isn't just silence. It's an unspoken signal that disrupts her expectations and engages her emotions in ways that constant conversation rarely does. 2. The curiosity trigger. Curiosity is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. When we're left wondering about something or someone, that lingering question has a way of sticking in our minds, often stronger than we expect. For a woman, curiosity can be the spark that shifts her attention back toward a man, especially when he masterfully uses it to create mystery and intrigue. When you're not laying all your cards on the table, she's left with questions. If you don't respond immediately, don't share everything or pull back just a little, she's likely to start wondering what's going on. It's natural to want what we don't fully understand. Curiosity fills the gaps we can't answer with scenarios and questions. What's he up to? Why did he suddenly change his approach? The reality is, if you make yourself too predictable, there's no intrigue left to sustain her interest. Constantly revealing your thoughts, plans, or feelings leaves little for her to explore. But the moment you introduce subtle gaps, she starts leaning in, trying to fill those blanks herself. Curiosity is a potent trigger, not because it's dramatic, but because it's subtle and steady. It's not about ignoring her. It's about leaving just enough space for her to start wondering about your next move. Imagine this scenario. You're talking with her regularly, perhaps every other day, and she's grown used to your rhythm. Then, you change the frequency. Maybe you skip a text one day or don't reply until later in the evening. This small shift can start her thinking, what's different? Why the change? In that pause, she may even feel a slight anxiety to reconnect simply because she's curious. This isn't a game of hard to get. It's about building interest through nuance. By being slightly unpredictable, you're allowing her imagination to work. Curiosity builds attraction in ways that routine cannot because it stimulates her mind as well as her emotions. Suddenly, you're not just someone in her life. You're the question she's trying to answer. The key is balance. Create that space, but don't become so elusive that you disappear. Let her wonder about the pieces you choose not to share immediately. Leave room for curiosity, and you'll find that she's not only more engaged, but more willing to invest time and energy into uncovering the sides of you she doesn't yet know. 3. The ego shock. The ego is powerful, but it's also sensitive, especially when someone we thought we had a hold on suddenly pulls away. This tactic, known as the ego shock, can have a profound psychological impact, especially when it's unexpected. When a man steps back, especially after showing attention and interest, it can jolt a woman into questioning her own assumptions, intentions, and even self-image. The sudden distance may leave her wondering why, challenging her sense of control or security in the dynamic. Think about this. When attention is constant and consistent, it's easy to take it for granted. But when it's withdrawn, even briefly, it creates a kind of absence that feels almost personal, sparking a reaction on an emotional and ego-driven level. It's not always about wanting more affection. Sometimes it's the human tendency to wonder why things changed and what it says about us. This reaction is a product of ego. When someone steps back, they disrupt that mental comfort zone, causing the mind to wonder, was it something I did? Why isn't he as engaged as he used to be? This approach triggers self-reflection in a way that simple attention can't. When a man's interest feels slightly removed, a woman's curiosity often combines with the need to feel reassured of her own appeal. This isn't about manipulation, but about allowing her to notice what she may be taking for granted. It's a strategy that lets her ego grapple with the shift, prompting her to want to restore the dynamic to feel that attention once again. The ego shock isn't about playing with emotions in a shallow sense. It's about creating an awareness of the value of someone's presence. By strategically pulling back, you create a space where she can see the contrast between your attention and its absence. That contrast has a powerful impact on the ego, making her realize that she may want to work to regain your focus and attention, re-establishing the bond or dynamic she thought she controlled. For a man, this tactic isn't about being cruel or detached. It's about self-respect and not bending over backward to validate someone who might be starting to take him for granted. This is where maturity and confidence come into play. Recognizing when to step back without being overly reactive allows you to protect your value, avoid desperation, and encourage a healthier balance in any relationship. Ultimately, the ego shock can make her more aware of the subtle impact of your presence, even if she hadn't fully realized it before. When a man respects his own worth and isn't afraid to create distance, it can be the wake-up call she needs to recognize that maintaining his attention and respect requires mutual effort and appreciation. 4. The rise of obsession. When a man pulls away, focusing on his own life and interests, something interesting happens in the background. A spark of obsession can begin to form. Why? Because a man who isn't constantly accessible, who isn't trying to please or chase, becomes a bit of a mystery, a puzzle that women feel driven to solve. This, gentlemen, is where the psychology of intrigue comes in. It's the power of knowing that when you focus on yourself, you don't lose value. Instead, you gain it. But here's the thing. A lot of men mess this up. Too many of you give and give, responding to every call, text, and whim without a second thought. You make yourself too available, and in the process, your presence becomes too predictable, too easy to take for granted. And here's the truth. Nothing crushes value like predictability. If you're always there, always yesing her needs without pausing for your own, you're signaling that you don't value yourself enough to even keep your own schedule intact. That's the first mistake you need to correct. The rise of obsession happens when there's a balance of presence and absence. When a woman knows that you have your own life, passions, and priorities, and that you won't simply drop everything for her, she starts to notice you differently. That independence, that refusal to be swayed easily, starts to build intrigue. And here's what's powerful. This isn't about trickery or mind games. It's about demonstrating that your life is worth living fully with or without her. Now, a little wake-up call. If you're constantly shifting your plans or life just to accommodate someone else's demands, you're not only diminishing your worth, but also showing that your life isn't in your control. You're giving someone else the reins. It's time to realize that self-respect means knowing your value and letting her sense that, with or without her presence, your life moves forward. Obsession rises from a place of admiration, and it's only possible when you've drawn boundaries that highlight your independence and confidence. And here's the bottom line. Obsession doesn't come from endless attention or being at someone's beck and call. It grows in that space where someone realizes they can't fully predict you or control your actions. This space is where they realize that to have a piece of your life, they'll have to respect and admire you, not just as a partner, but as a whole person. So if you want to create a bit of that obsession, the key is self-respect and independence. Stop being so eager to please and start being a man who values his time and energy. Make her see you as someone worth admiring, not someone she can bend to her will. If you do this, the rise of obsession won't be far behind. 5. The pursuit of closure. Closure is a powerful concept, especially when someone feels it slipping away. When you step back or disappear without giving her a clear reason, it can leave her feeling unsettled, wondering what went wrong and craving answers. This pursuit of closure is a potent psychological effect that often works in your favor when you keep your distance and resist the urge to explain. The ambiguity drives curiosity, and that curiosity can become a lingering thought that she can't shake off. Too many men make the mistake of explaining themselves, thinking that if they can just clarify things, the situation will be resolved. But here's the reality. Explanations rarely create closure. They usually only feed more questions. Giving her closure by spelling everything out doesn't make her respect you more or obsess over you. It simply closes the door and allows her to walk away without a second thought. When there's a gap left open, however, she's far more likely to fill that void with thoughts of you. She'll revisit conversations, replay moments in her mind, and even look for answers in places where none were given. The trick is to become comfortable with the uncomfortable, to accept that silence speaks louder than explanations sometimes. The pursuit of closure keeps her invested, searching for meaning, and ultimately brings her focus back to you. Here's the part where a lot of men need to wake up. If you constantly run to give her answers, to assure her or smooth things over, you're diminishing the impact you could have by simply letting things be. It's not about manipulation. It's about respecting the effect your absence can create without ruining it with too many words. Consider it this way. When someone leaves us hanging without closure, we feel the need to understand why. It's human nature. And for a woman who felt connected to you, that need can turn into a relentless pursuit for understanding. The less you give away, the more the questions pile up, turning into a cycle of replayed scenarios and analysis. It might seem cold, but it's a simple truth. The desire for closure makes people chase after those who've left quietly. So here's your advice. If she pulls back, don't rush to explain or give her a reason for your behavior. Let her wonder. Let her feel the uncertainty. In a world where everyone is quick to clarify, to apologize, or to justify, the man who's comfortable leaving some things unsaid becomes a rare and memorable figure. The pursuit of closure has a way of turning people's thoughts inwards, making them focus on what they could have done differently or what they missed. Instead of letting her off the hook, let her thoughts linger. Let her chase closure on her own. And if she finds herself coming back, craving that sense of finality or understanding, you'll know it's because she's invested, not just in answers, but in you. Here's the hard truth most people won't tell you. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to simply do nothing. That silence, that unanswered question, the lack of closure, it isn't weakness, its strength. If she's really interested, she'll find herself thinking about you, even obsessing over why you're not rushing to explain or clarify. Let her feel that distance and watch as the power shifts. After all, if she's really invested, she'll come looking for those answers herself. And if not, then she was never really there in the first place. So, what's been your experience? Have you ever pulled back and seen things turn around? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear your take and see what's worked for you. I'll be reading and responding, so let's dive into this together and see how much power we really hold when we dare to be different.